the Crypt.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Welcome to episode 34 of Dads from the Crypt, a Tales from the Crypt podcast. My name is Jason. I am joined by Mondo.
Hello.
Jody.
Hello.
And tonight we have a special guest. She is a writer and filmmaker. Her name is Danica Uskert. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into Tales from the Crypt?
Well, originally I was a maker of experimental erotica shorts, and my work is screened at Vault Film Festival and Porn Film Festival Berlin and Porn Film Festival Vienna. My more mainstream work, I was the executive producer of H.P. Mendoza's Bitter Melon. I'm sorry, I'm so nervous, you guys.
That's okay.
Oh no, you're good. Don't be nervous. It's totally cool.
But more recently, I did a graphic novel with my best friend who is a trans artist, and it's kind of about my unfortunate love life in Hollywood. And that can currently be viewed at the Institute of Contemporary Art in London. So
That's awesome.
thank you.
And tell us about your love of Tales from the Crypt.
Well, I started watching Tales from the Crypt when I was very young. I would sneak out into the living room and watch it when my parents were asleep. I'm about the same age as all of you. The pancake makeup conceals it very well, but I'm right there with you. So
We need some tips because none of us look as young as you do.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
it really is the Baby Jane pancake. That's all. So, but I don't know. It's a show that truly made me appreciate horror and the craft of filmmaking. I always loved the giallo lighting techniques and that sort of thing. I loved all the guest stars. I loved seeing how it was clear everybody had a prompt, and I liked seeing how different directors worked with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You have a favorite episode?
Yeah, on a dead man's chest, and I hope to be able to discuss it with you later season.
Yeah,
So,
we'll get you back for that one next season.
Yeah, that'd be
Thank
cool.
you.
That'd be cool.
Okay. Well, before we start in with our review, we just want to take a moment to talk about our sponsor, Fright Rags. Their latest release is Twin Peaks shirts. Speaking of 90s TV, Jody, I know you're a big Twin Peaks fan. Have you taken a look at any shirts yet?
Oh yeah, no, they've got some great stuff right now. Yeah, they're killing it right now between the Fulci stuff and the Twin Peaks stuff. I'm loving it.
If we put this on video, I'm rocking the zombie Jaws shirt, which is like my favorite thing of all time.
Yeah,
It's fantastic.
I need to go order one. The Twin Peaks stuff. I actually never watched Twin Peaks. I missed it, and I just started watching some of it, and it's a really good show.
Jason thought it was a show about the restaurant. He was super
I know. I was a little disappointed at first. And if you do want to buy anything from Fright Rags, make sure you use the code Crypt10 to show your support for the show. We don't get any money off of that, but it just shows that you listen and you are a fan.
One more thing, Fright Rags, if you guys pre-order them, just started shipping the Darcy the Male Girl figures.
Ooh.
And like the 2-pack with Joe Bob, Darcy, and with Ernie. So look out for those if you pre-ordered those. I'm super excited because I've already said we are not a religious family, but we're gonna have a nativity set with Ernie as a little baby Jesus.
Awesome. Okay, well, tonight we will be discussing Tales from the Crypt episode Easel Kill Ya, which premiered on July 17th, 1991. Jody, give us a plot synopsis.
All right, so this time we open on the Crypt Keeper in another fantastic costume. This time he's dressed as a painter with a smock and a beret and a little curly mustache. The mustache is really what just puts it over the top. It's fantastic.
I'm just gonna say, I just can't handle people though in real life hanging out with handlebar mustaches. we can't have a conversation and not talk about why you have that. There has to be a reason.
Just
And-
what's going on there?
Yeah, like maybe you're a unicyclist, maybe you're a poet. I don't know.
A barber, a Russian wrestler. Like you got all kinds of options.
Dude, first of all, Zangief had that full beard. He had
Yeah.
a full beard. He wasn't rocking no handlebar mustache.
That's true. That's
He was
true.
spinning pile driving people. So.
Was it a Dolly reference?
I
Salvador
don't know
Dali.
if it's a full Dolly mustache.
if
but
it's a
definitely
Dolly-
got that
yeah.
artist mustache for sure.
If it's a Dolly reference, you got to go over the top with it.
Yeah.
You have to, and you have to have some anteaters in the background that you might just pick up a once later.
All right. So once we get into our actual story, we're introduced to an artist named Jack. He's got a bunch of paintings displayed in his studio. They're kind of abstract colors. And there's a woman there who had promised him a show, but she doesn't really like any of the stuff he's got. She says, maybe you should start drinking again because your art was better when you were drinking. And she said, but if you need money, though, I'll offer you a job. And then he picks up a hammer and bashes her in the head with it. But that's just a daydream. Jack's in an AA meeting. He's confessing to these kind of fantasies he's having, but the person leading the meeting's like, but you didn't murder her. So that's great.
Real quick, was that an AA meeting or the chalkboard said obsessive?
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
obsessive anonymous, but I think it was supposed to. I think it's pretty much.
I think it's kind of a both and
recovery.
because there's definitely some alcoholism talk
Oh, yeah.
going on in other places too.
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
get
so-
into that. We can get
Yeah,
into that in a minute.
There's some kind of meeting going where these people are working through their problems, and he gets affirmation, and when he leaves, this pretty lady named Sharon follows him out, and she says, "You're being too hard on yourself." He says, "I haven't sold anything in a year," and then she kind of offers to be his inspiration in kind of a flirty way. And he said, "I thought you were supposed to be staying away from obsessive relationships." So that's kind of her issue is obsessive relationships. So she goes back with him to the studio and she kind of does a little sexy pose to flirt with him, but he shuts her down and offers her a drink of water. Again, that's kind of that alcoholism concern that she has on her face when he offers a drink. But she says he's a good man. And she leaves, but she says she'll be back tomorrow to pose again. So later that night, he's painting and his neighbor is listening to some really loud, like hair metal. And Jack's yelling at him over the fire escape and the guy's being a jerk and turning the music up. And so Jack drops a flower pot on the guy's head and it knocks him off the fire escape. He does a few flips and lands on the ground and dies. Jack sees the dead body laying there. He takes some pictures and he goes and paints that image. He thinks no one's going to buy it, but then he starts looking through an art magazine and he sees all these Holocaust pictures that were in a gallery. And he says, okay, maybe there is a market. So he finds this private collector who collects morbid art, and he's got this whole like personal gallery full of pictures of death, and some of them are famous pictures like from the news and things like that. And he shows the collector his painting, and the collector loves it. He said, what all these photos are missing is the artist touch, and you've got that artist touch. And that's what I've been looking for. So he pays him $2,000, and the collector says, the next one you bring me, I'll pay you $20,000 for. He said, don't be afraid of this kind of art. Let yourself go. Let yourself do this. And so Jack tries painting another picture of the same kind of stuff, but it's just not working. He kind of imagines Sharon in some sexy poses, but none of it's working for him. He throws the painting on the ground and starts to walk out of his building when his landlady offers for him to come party with her and say, bring the booze and we'll have a little party. And she mocks him for his sobriety. And then she says something about moving some boxes. And he said, I'll help you. And pushes her down the stairs. And when she falls at the bottom of the stairs, she lands on a pair of gardening shears that stick out through her chest. And Jack takes pictures of her again. And this time he collects some of her blood in a jar. And she wakes up and grabs at him. And while she's screaming and struggling and dying, he takes some more pictures of her. So Jack's really gone all in on this photos of dead people and paintings. He paints this more abstract picture of a body and guts and the shears coming out of him. And when Sharon comes over, he hides all that. He hides the painting. He hides all the photos. She said he hasn't been coming to group, but then he tells her he has a patron and she's excited. But then, she's kind of making some moves on him. He says, you don't really know me. And he uncovers the painting and shows her the painting. She says, yes, I do. They start kissing. And as they're having sex later, she says for him to give in and not hold back. And when she says give in, not hold back, that kind of repeats in his head. And he hears the collector's voice telling him to give in. And he starts to strangle her. He's about to bash her in the head. And he just kind of has this moment where he realizes that something is really wrong with him. So he takes that painting to the collector, says, wait here, please be here when I get back. The collector says, this is the beginning of a brilliant career. Jack says, I'm done with all this though. Like, this is not the beginning, this is the end. But the collector offers him $100,000 for his next painting. Jack goes back to his apartment, and Sharon has found the photos of the dead bodies, the jar of blood, and she panics and runs away. Jack says, I'm not that person anymore, but it's too late. She runs out of the building and immediately gets hit by a taxi. So then we go to the hospital. At the hospital, a doctor is telling him that her brain is damaged, but the best neurosurgeon in the city is on the way. But Sharon is uninsured, and she can't pay for this expensive surgery. So Jack says, I'll get the money for you. So this is really a story about how our insurance system is crap. All the way back in the 90s. We already knew it. But anyway, so Jack says, I'll get the money for you. And he goes out in the parking lot and he kills the first person he sees. I have thoughts about that. But and he hurriedly paints a picture, kind of an abstract picture with the man's blood on a piece of cardboard. And the collector is super happy about it. Jack demands his $100,000 payment. Jack returns to the hospital and he brings the check to the doctor, but the doctor said the surgeon that was on his way to save Sharon was murdered right there in the parking lot. So that was the man that Jack killed. He killed a man who looked very much like a doctor in the parking lot of a hospital, and shockingly, it was a doctor. Jack was not a smart man, but he killed a dude who looked like a doctor, and it turned out he was the doctor who could have saved her. And as he's looking into her room, she dies. And then a detective comes up behind him and says, so I hear you're an artist. And he shows him the bloody paintbrush from the murder scene, obviously catching him with what he had done. And then we fade to black.
All right. Thank you, Jody. Danica, as our guest, why don't you start us off? What did you think of this episode?
I love Tim Roth, so I absolutely love this episode. And in my own experiences navigating the art world now and collecting patrons of my own, it takes on a special resonance because there's always the question of what you would be willing to do for patronage. Would you be willing to throw loved ones under a bus for more money for your work? Would you, like, how low would you go, basically? And the one line from this episode that really strikes me is when Sharon is speaking to Jack outside of the meeting. And when she's saying you're being too hard on yourself, he says, no suffering, no art, right? And so I think as someone who has been in the art world for some time, I always ponder that question, like, does art require suffering? I like how this episode flips that theme on its head, because it's not necessarily his suffering. He's over it. He's sober. He's sober until Mayflower pushes the alcohol into his hand during their first meeting, I think. But for the most part, he's fine-ish, except that he's broke. I mean, he's clearly been sober for some time, and it's not his suffering in this episode. It's the suffering he inflicts on others that brings him his success. So I don't know. Until the end, where it all catches up with him.
Yeah, in classic Tales from the Crypt style.
Right.
Mondo, what do you think?
Well, you bring up a really great point on saying that somebody else's suffering. I never really thought of that. I think that's a really, really good point, because just as I won't call myself a musician, but a guy that dabbles in some darker forms of metal, like, I don't write good music when I'm happy. And that's probably why I haven't written any good music in a long time. But like, I hate this. I'm being honest. Like, in my darkest points is when I think I put out I've done my best work and written my best work or written my best lyrics. But I never quite really thought that this episode is a really great point. Saying the suffering of others brought forth this greatness from him. This is actually one of the first episodes I remember ever watching as a kid, and I distinctly remember, of all things, the garden shears to the stomach.
Yeah.
And it's funny rewatching it today, and I probably haven't watched this episode in at least a decade, if not longer than that. I always had that vision in my head that was way more brutal and gory than it actually was, but still, they still did, I think, a pretty good job with the brutality on this. And yeah, I would say this is again, like, this season 3 has just been killer for episodes, and this is another one that ranks up there as far as my favorites go on this from the whole series. I really like too. They did a scene earlier where he first goes to the benefactor's mansion, and everything is just kind of almost everything is a bright white, like very clerical, very very sterile. And then the only things that aren't really are the rose and the guy's white suit. He had like a yellow rose, and then the painting and the obviously the artist. So I kind of thought that they were the outsiders in that. It kind of made him look like they're the outsiders in that world, being the more brutal forms of art. But yeah, overall, I'll say this ranks up there for my Tales from the Crypt episodes. As I love the idea of the suffering, the artist suffering, but it wasn't his suffering, other people's suffering. But at the end, it comes back around. And it's funny. My wife's an artist, and the first thing she said is like, "Why wouldn't he just go to the store and buy like a canvas? Why does he have to in cardboard? Cardboard is the worst material of all time to ever paint on." And I do like the fact that they came back around with him leaving the paintbrush there at the scene of the crime, which is finally the reason why they found out he was a killer. Although, like, there were 3 deaths in that same apartment complex, all brutal in the same month. You think you'd be questioning around, like,
yeah, I think they'd be checking the people.
Yeah, I always love the bumbling cops. And the first murder is that asshole rocker who by the way had the worst wig of all time. That was like an all-time bad cinema wig. I love it. Just the plant hits him in the head. It was a total accident. He could just call the cops. The cops have been like, yeah, that all makes sense. There's no way you could have killed him. But he uses it for his art, which I kind of get too, because it's kind of a big thing. Like, I'll use the beer industry of all things. Everyone always wants to be independent. And then you see these smaller breweries selling out to big corporate, big giant conglomerates. And it's really easy to stand on the sideline and say that I would never do that. But I've also never had a Wells Fargo truck back up to my house either. And when it comes to that, when it comes to money, when it comes to finally being able to, I mean, there's, have you guys ever heard of the band called Soil?
Mm-mm.
They got kind of big in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think they were on the Spider-Man soundtrack, the original one. But they were all, 3 out of the 5 members were in an old death metal band called Obsessor. Not mainstream at all. And then they decided to make a band called Soil, and they made fucking $1 million. And everyone called them sellouts. I'm like, that's really easy to do when no one's ever offered you $1 million to change your way, to change your style. So I can't judge them for that. I just can't, because as a guy who at one point was a very struggling, trying to, be in a band back in, granted, it's been 20 years, but I can't tell you what I'd have done if someone offered me a lot of money to play a pop punk album, which I despise, or something like that.
I mean, yeah, if you've been a struggling artist for like 20 years, and then suddenly somebody wants to offer you actual money, and do you have a family and different type of lifestyle, I don't see that much wrong with that.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's real easy to sit in the sidelines and say, like, yeah, I would never do that. But like right now, if anybody's listening and wants to pay me like $1 million to write a folk record, I got you. I'll figure it out. Like, I'll fucking sell out right now. I have no problems.
Mondo, speaking of music, not that you know every song ever written.
No idea. I know what you're gonna ask, but I have no idea what that song was. I wanted to look it up, but I didn't have any idea what that song was.
I even tried to have later. Yeah, I even tried to have my Google figure out, like, listen to it. And I don't know if there's too much background noise or just isn't a real song, but it couldn't.
There's so many late 80s, early 90s, like it actually sounded more thrash metal. Actually, it actually sounded kind of cool. Kind of in that vein where you have these glam bands are trying to still have a harder edge, but I couldn't put my finger on who it was. I bet you we'll talk about it next week. I'll find out by next week.
All right. Here's your assignment.
I just found out this I just watched it this morning, so I didn't have time to look it up.
Yeah, I looked on IMDb at the soundtrack and it didn't list anything. So who knows? All right, Jody, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I think this is a really good episode. It's a much darker episode than some of the ones we've been seeing lately, because, a lot of them have that kind of edge of humor and, some silliness. This one's pretty straight. Like, it's a pretty dark episode about addiction. I mean, the same thing that drives him to drink, it feels like that's somehow connected to his desire to get this affirmation, to get these paintings, to murder. Like, there's this obsessive nature that he has, and that's not an easy topic. That's not one that lends itself to making a lot of jokes. The only part that kind of falls flat for me was, like I said, at the ending, it's a little contrived, that he happens to kill the one guy. And again, if you're trying not to murder somebody who can be a brain surgeon, don't go out to the hospital parking lot and find the dude who looks the most like a doctor and kill him.
But you also got to look at it though, that he's in love with this woman, right?
Yeah, no, he's
not thinking his first he sees the first person, he's like, fuck it, let's go make some money. And I don't think you ever cross through his brain that this guy might be the surgeon. I get it, dude. Like, yeah, why would you kill a guy in the hospital parking lot that's dressed like a doctor?
Yeah, it's just in the plot of this episode, it's just a little bit contrived to get that twist ending there. But
I mean, the character had everything except for like brain surgeon tattooed on his forehead,
right? Carrying a bag that says brains on the side,
extra brains.
I fix brains on his shirt, something, but yeah, no, it's so, the end, by the time it happens, that's a little silly, but in an episode that's serious, like I think it takes just a little bit away from it, but the episode itself, the rest of it, I think is really good. I really like the performances, even the relationship between the two leads. I buy it. Like I feel like there is something there and it's going well, and he's got this darkness that he's trying to hide from her, that he's trying to keep from her, and just can't. The darkness eventually catches up with him. So, I feel like there's a lot of good stuff in this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop in. Yeah, this is a really good episode. Tim Roth just kills it in every performance. He just has this like ability to have this like caged intensity.
Yeah,
where he's not like going over the board, but you can just like see it kind of behind the facade. That he's just ready to like go crazy. He's got this like sweaty look, and it's just
real quick. I often ask dumb questions I didn't pay enough attention to. When he was choking her in bed, though, I'm gonna hit her with the clock. Was that real, or was that in his brain?
I think. Well, so what I think Jody didn't mention was when that's happening, he's having a vision of Malcolm, the benefactor. So he thought it was him that was egging him on to do more paintings and stuff.
I should really pay attention to Jody's recaps. I'm sorry.
I'll be glazed over that. But actually, one thing I was going to bring up was that was like one of the first that I can think of so far within Tales of Crypt, like of a homoerotic image, because he's having sex with her, but then suddenly he's like imagining this other guy naked underneath him.
Yeah,
so,
but what I mean is like after that, when he holds the clock, because he's
he is he's physically doing that.
Like it, some red flags there, but
some red flags.
Keep going.
But that was like the first kind of homoerotic image that we've really seen Tales from the Crypt, because again, these are based on really old comics where that definitely would not, kind of thing would definitely not be a plot. And again, in the 90s, they weren't going to put that in.
I can tell you that is
the sake of it.
A spoiler for the comic in a minute. That's not in there.
No. So I thought that was interesting to see. Did anyone else think that the surgeon was going to be Malcolm when he like I thought he was going to turn around and Malcolm the patron was going to show up as a surgeon, and it was going to be like this, like, oh, you need to go do something really heinous.
No, not at all, because Malcolm was the guy that's offering him money. That made zero sense. Like,
I know. I thought, well, again, before, but then they went out to the parking lot and you saw the other guy. I'm like, oh, okay, that's obviously.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But I thought Malcolm was going to show up, and turns out he was going to be the surgeon or something. I thought he was going to figure into the ending a little bit more.
Malcolm has a lot of money from something. I want to know where he's getting his money from.
Why can't people just? This is America, Jody. Why can't people just make a lot of money?
Sure.
Bitcoin.
This does have a billionaire.
He got get a Dogecoin at the bottom.
Oh God, you would too, but like grotesque pictures. He'd have grotesque picture NFTs.
Yeah. Trading them on BBS boards back in the early 90s.
God. This does have one of my pet peeves in film is whenever they show any sort of recovery meeting, that's not how recovery meetings really work. Where anytime you watch a TV show or movie and they show recovery meeting, there's always people sitting in rows and there's like one speaker that's leading the meeting, like a professional. That's more of a group therapy, wherein a actual recovery meeting would have people in the circle. There would not be a leader guiding it. It would just be led by the members.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of those things. Every time I see it, it just kind of bugs me. But yeah, this is interesting. The twist at the end, it was a little interesting because he was using his obsession as a means to help someone he loved. Where usually it comes out to this obsession where the climax has something to do with the obsession itself. I'm not sure if I'm making sense with that.
No, I see what you're saying, but like at the end of the day, though, it actually ties in kind of to the reluctant vampire, where he's killing people with the best of intentions, but you're still killing people.
But it doesn't start out that way. Again, as
Right.
as we've covered, the first death was an accident, and the other deaths were or the death after that was money motivated solely for him, not for her yet.
Yeah.
Honestly, this episode doesn't do a very good job at establishing his poverty or need. I felt like there needed to be more tension in the scene with the landlady. Instead of her asking him to buy booze, she should have asked for a fucking rent check, you know?
Yeah.
Because we needed to see, I think, his desperation just a little bit more.
Good point. Yeah. Great point. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I want to talk about the casting a little bit. So this was directed by John Harrison. He did 8 episodes of Tales from the Dark Side. He did the Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. He did this little sci-fi show I used to watch when I was a kid called Earth 2.
I like that show. I remember.
Yeah, I need to rewatch that. I just remember liking those aliens that like popped out of the ground. That was cool.
I feel like that was one of the first shows I remember really getting into that just got like canceled without any kind of ending, and that scarred me for the rest of TV.
Right. He did the Dune miniseries. He did the Clive Barker adaptation of Book of Blood, and he's also done a bunch of the episodes for the new Creep Show TV.
Oh, cool.
He did an episode that I'm really obsessed with, Lydia Lane's Better Half.
Yeah, which one's that?
Oh, it's the one where it's about a lesbian power relationship. There's a businesswoman kind of offering a promotion to either a male associate of hers or her Filipina partner. And she shoots down her Filipina partner in favor of promoting this male, and then she kills her partner.
Oh.
So I'm obsessed with it for the same reason I'm obsessed with On a Dead Man's Chest, because of, Asian American representation in media. And I was very surprised, honestly, that after the murders in Atlanta, that episode wasn't just like disappeared, vanished, but it's still there. So I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel that he wrote it, and I just don't know. I have questions. So
that's interesting. I think I've seen some of the Creep Show TV. I haven't seen that one.
Was that from the newest season?
it's from the very first season, I believe.
First. I must have seen it now. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it then.
I just checked. He also did the House of the Head episode of Creep Show, the one with the dollhouse and the little hit.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. That was a good one.
That was really like a strong opener. So yeah, he's done some good stuff.
So Tim Roth, he's done a crap ton of things. His biggest things are obviously Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Four Rooms, Planet of the Apes. He does the show Lie to Me, and he's done some Marvel stuff, but I guess he has a big role in the new She-Hulk TV show. So that's gonna be interesting. The woman that he falls in love with, Sharon, is played by Roya Megnot or Megnot. I'm not entirely sure. She was in some soap opera called Loving that went for like 1,000 episodes. I've never heard of. She's also in Quantum Leap and MacGyver, but she had a pretty short career. I thought this is interesting. The landlady is played by Nancy Fish. She was in Howard the Duck, Roseanne. She was one of the nurses in Exorcist 3. She was in Death Becomes Her, Dr. Giggles. She was also in The Mask as a landlady.
Oh, I remember that.
The one that he like one of the first like scenes where he puts on the mask and goes off.
Yeah.
So she's got a little typecast going there. His agent Ellen is played by Deborah Mooney. She was also in the soap opera Loving and Roseanne. So I don't know if there's I don't know if this is the agent for that show. Okay, I know people that I can throw into this. She was in The Practice. She was also in Scandal and Grey's Anatomy. She was also in the Jodi Arias Dirty Little Secrets TV movie from Lifetime, which actually was just covered by our friend Joe on his podcast Small Town Failing. So shout out to them and give that episode a watch with his friend.
Real quick, if I can just say, he releases previews to the episode like on Sunday or Monday, and they're not a knock on the episode at all. They are probably better than the episode. They're like 10 minutes long. I listened to them on the way to work and I laughed the whole time to work. So thanks, Joe.
All right. And then, of course, Malcolm is played by William Atherton, who was Walter Peck in Ghostbusters, and the reporter from the Die Hard, both the first two Die Hards. Again, if you want an asshole, he'll play you an asshole. Yeah. He was also in the Jersey Shore Shark Attack. So He's having a great
That
career.
classic.
I can only think that like I'm not going to try to do a New Jersey voice, but you want an asshole? I'll get you an asshole. I got a guy.
Yeah, I kind of was hoping he'd go a little more over the top in this episode. It was for him, it was a little restrained.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping he would play into the end game a little more, but you know, but this is definitely a more cerebral, more darker thematic episode. I've definitely thought about it more than I have a lot of the other episodes after watching it. All right, Jody, do you want to give us the comic comparison?
Yeah, so this came from the Vault of Horror number 31. That's June 1953. And the story and the art were done by the same person this time, a man named Johnny Craig. And this comic looks great, by the way. Like it's got a really cool, distinctive art style. I really like the way it looks.
Yeah, there's that one panel there where he's just kind of like looking up kind of with insanity and laughing, and there's like circles going around his head.
That's a really cool looking.
That panel, I want to blow up with that panel.
Well, this one also, Vault of Horror number 31 had a panel from, or not a panel from this. The cover is from this story, and this is one of those I'm sure that upset parents back in the day because it's a rainstorm and there's a man laying on a street and his head is just pulverized, like it's just this bloody pulp with blood all over the ground, and there's a man standing there holding a mallet in his hand. Not sure if it's from this one or not, but it's just one of those like EC comic covers that almost feels like it was made to piss parents off. But anyway, in this one, it's the same basic plot points, except this time it starts off completely different. There's a 20-year-old artist or 29-year-old artist who is about to commit suicide. His art career is not going well. He's about to jump off a bridge. And while he's standing there, a car slams into a concrete barrier right in front of him. And a woman staggers out. She's covered in blood and she falls to the ground dead. And he runs home like giddy. He's so excited because he's found out other people can suffer like he is. And he's laughing, and he goes home and he paints that scene. And he sells it to a collector for $100. Tries to paint another, but he can't. And then he starts thinking, I will actually have the world's respect if I have money. Money is the thing that would separate me, and people would see that I'm important. So I need to get money. And the way I can get money is by selling to this guy. He's willing to buy from me. And so he goes, he causes another car crash. He's very set on the car crash idea. He moves some detour signs around. It causes another car to slam directly into a concrete barrier. And he looks in the window. Once again, he comes back giddy. That's where that panel that Jason's talking about of him just like looking at the sky and like laughing with all these insanity lines around him. And so the old man pays him again. And he kind of spirals. He's like beating random people up in an alley and painting pictures based on it. And but he starts to struggle with what he's become. And then out of the blue, this neighbor woman shows up. She's a new neighbor, and they kind of hit it off, and he starts trying to paint her, and he's kind of getting stuff under control again, but he still feels this guilt, and he confesses to her everything. He tells her about this darkness inside of him. He tells her about what he's done, and she accepts him, and she says, I love you and I want to marry you. And so the next morning they're going to go get the marriage license, but she doesn't show up. And it turns out that she got hit by a car that night, and goes to the hospital, and she has to have a $3,000 brain operation. 1950s, folks. And like in the show, he kills a random man, paints what he has done. And except for this time, the old man refuses to pay him. So he kills the old man too, to try to get that money. And he steals it. And, but just like in the show, the man he killed was the surgeon who could do the $3,000 brain operation. And so the girl he has met dies, and he sits there, and he hears there's a big thing about a clock ticking in the last scene of him just sitting there. It's like tock, 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 tick, tock, tick, all around him, as he realizes that murder does not solve all of your problems. Sometimes it actually causes them.
Earlier on, we were about to shit on the American healthcare system, which I'm totally down to do. But like 1950, $3,000.
Mhm.
That's fucking insane. Like, how many people could just pony up $3,000 today for that kind of surgery? Yeah,
So
man. I'm not gonna get political, but like,
yeah.
it's only been like 70 years and nothing's changed.
I don't think in the TV show version they never actually say how much money. They never tell him how much money.
They say it'll be a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, I know. He was like, "Oh, okay, let me go get a lot of money."
Uh,
I thought that was kind of funny. And then Joy, I was looking at something for a second. So I don't know if you mentioned that in the comic, he kills the patron and just takes the money. So again, he's just got like these handfuls of cash. It's like, here's 2 handfuls of cash. That should be enough, right?
Right.
It's very
He's
comic
just like
book
shoving money at them. Yeah.
comic book logic.
well, no, I love the idea. Like, we see in old westerns when someone's like, "Yeah, go ahead. I need a room and a horse," and they just throw a fucking piece
Here's a
of gold.
coin.
Here's some gold on the table. See what happens. If you guys haven't seen it, this is super off topic, but have you guys seen A Million Ways to Die in the West?
Yes.
No, I never did see that. One.
It's
they
pretty
bet they bet $1 at a competition, and a guy smacks his son in the back of the head and goes, "Take your hat off, boy. That's $1 bill." It's actually Jason. That'd be right up your alley. Yeah,
I know. It's one of those movies I know I'd like. I just never got around to seeing it.
Yeah, I think you'd like that movie. It's a pretty fun movie.
It's good silly humor.
One thing we haven't mentioned is that this episode was written by Larry Wilson. And again, this is one of those episodes where it doesn't really, it sticks to the very skeleton of the comic, and they kind of adapt it to a whole other thing, which is kind of cool. Because sometimes when they stick too closely to the comic, it's a little basic. So I like how much he brought forth his own vision to this. So this guy, he wrote Beetlejuice. He wrote the Addams Family movie from the 90s. What else? He wrote 5 Tales from the Crypt episodes, and he directed one of them. This is the first one that he wrote. And he's done a ton more, but yeah, it's a really talented guy. So I'm excited to see more of his work.
I saw that he. Oh, sorry. I saw that he had Beetlejuice and Addams Family in his repertoire, and I found that made sense because then you have again the commentary on The Outsider, and also in Beetlejuice a commentary on modern art. Since they're pushing Delia to do something more, something different. They find her sculptures very trite originally, so sometimes.
No, it's great. One of my favorite things about Addams Family is that they see themselves as the normal family when everything outside is all weird. And I really do love that, as coming from a guy who, like, my wife and I are atheists into metal and horror. We've always kind of felt that we were like, we're normal. You're the outsider because you watch all those rom-coms. There's nothing wrong with rom-coms, just saying. But
I have a question. You mentioned that your wife was an artist. Was she chuckling at the off-brand Mondrian paintings at the beginning? Because
kind of, but not so much. I know what you mean though. She was more angry at the cardboard. The cardboard is what set her off. Like, why would you paint anything on cardboard? It's the worst medium. And to kind of throw it out there, she actually had an art show down here, and she painted a cover of a band I've covered before in my song of the Cannibal Corpse. She did a painting of their Gallery of Suicide album cover using human blood.
That's amazing.
Ooh.
And then she got offers for it to buy it, but she put a stupid high price tag on it. For the right purposes. She didn't really want to sell it, but she's like, but if you gave me this much money, I'll sell it.
Wait, so whose blood was it?
Hers and mine.
Nice.
It hangs by her front door. So if you come to my house, you can see it.
So you're telling me I can buy some of your blood?
You can definitely buy some. Well, it depends. The painting is really expensive. If you just want some of my blood for recreational purposes, DM me. We'll work something out.
I'll sign in your DM. We can work out an arrangement.
I don't know why you want it, but if you want it, whatever. That won't be the weirdest thing I sold Jason, so it's fine.
Yeah, pretty much.
Since we're talking about blood and art, I was wondering if this episode reminded you of, since you spoke about it on a previous episode, Bliss? Were any of you getting Bliss vibes, or maybe like
now that you mention it, that makes a lot of sense.
Because
I need to revisit that, because I did not like it on my first watch.
I like it a lot.
this is funny, is like, again, Jody, I always say you're my litmus test. Like it's
Yeah.
rare. We don't align on some things, but it's pretty rare. But I watched it the first time. And I heard so many people whose opinions I really respect like it. I'm like, fuck, maybe I just need to give it another shot. I could have been the wrong mindset, but
I think for Bliss, you kind of have to be in the right mindset of it is a sensory experience. Like go somewhere where you can turn up the sound. There's a lot of soundtrack on this one and just take it all in. Like if you can just do that, I think it's a really cool movie.
were you high as fuck when you watched it?
No,
Okay.
I just really it was just watching it and just you have to not dissect it too much. I think when you dissect it, it takes something away from it. It's just a movie to take in as a whole. Like it's auditory, it's visual.
It's an
all
experience
that.
movie.
Yeah.
Like Climax. It made me think of a lot about that movie.
It's also about addiction and art.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
Definitely. All right.
Well, Jason, do you think a lot about Climax?
I love the soundtrack.
I was going to say this episode also reminded me of two other films, A Bucket of Blood and Color Me Blood Red.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar, because it's the same basic premise. You have a struggling artist who, after a few murders becomes successful and the murder parlays into his success. So, yeah.
Yeah. Also made me think of the new Candyman a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I can see that. That's interesting.
Yeah, art and horror tend to go well together, just in general. A lot of giallo have artists at the center of them and have paintings and music and things like that. There's just something about, I guess, because horror is such a taps something deep inside you when it works well and creates fear and discomfort and things like that. Good art does the same thing sometimes. And so art and horror, I really think, just tie together in a really nice way.
And Color Me Blood Red is such a cool comparison because H.G. Lewis, he was kind of the innovator of blood in color with Blood Feast. And I think, was Color Me Blood Red right after Blood Feast? Or was it a few down the road?
It's right there around that time. I know that.
No, it's interesting because that was kind of like when they first, they consider that the first gore film of all time because he's the first person to colorize the blood effects, I guess. So yeah, it's a really cool comparison. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but Color Me Blood Red is when he was painting pictures with their blood, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's been a while. I'm old and I forget so much shit.
All right. Okay, let's do our episode ranking. Danica, scale of 1 to 5, you can do half points, 5 being masterpiece. What do you rate this episode?
If I had to be honest, a 3.5. I love it, but it's still not as when compared to other episodes, it's still not completely up there for me.
Okay, that's fair. That's all good. Jody.
I'm gonna go a little bit higher on this one just because I've seen some of the ones that I feel like rank more mid-tier. I feel like this one's a little more elevated. We've got some really great performances. There's just there's something about this one, something in the background, a little serious subject matter that I enjoyed this time. So I'm gonna give this a trying to decide between a 4 and a 4.5. I'm gonna go 4. Not going to go all the way to 4.5. We've had some really great ones lately, and this is a really good one, I think.
Okay. Mondo.
Jody is just always super negative about everything. So I'm going to go with a 4.5 on this one. Only because, again, it's one of those episodes I remember very vividly watching when I was young, real young. And for that alone, it's going to rank higher for me because this kind of was one of the things that ushered in my love of horror. So I'm going to be very, very generous to it. And believe me, I was already expecting before we even watched this to give it a 5. And then when I watched it, I was like, it's not a 5. It's not. It's close. It's close. So 4.5 for me.
Yeah, this is a tough one because outside of Tales from the Crypt, I think it's really, really good. But in the pantheon of Tales from the Crypt, it's somewhat lacking. So I guess I'm going to stick to comparing it to other Tales from the Crypt episodes. I'll go to 3.5. I feel like that's a good one. If Malcolm had shown up to be a really big asshole right at the end or something like that, I don't know. They need to go a little more off the wall in Tales from the Crypt style to I don't know. I want a little bit more from as a Tales from the Crypt episode, but as just a standalone, yeah, I think it's really, really, really good. But yeah, that's where I fall on that one.
All right.
Okay, well, that moves us on to our song of the day, Mondo.
Real fast, can we all just talk about how good Jason's beard looks tonight? Like, dude, your beard is looking fantastic tonight.
Actually, I trimmed it myself today.
Oh, you did? Oh man, it's looking good. Whatever you did, you did a good job.
Yeah, no, I did like a whole head buzz, and then I just took it and just went straight down at the angle.
Your head looks the same. Like,
Oh, yeah, no, my head always looks. No, I was getting like these curls in the back, bugging me.
But your beard's looking good. Real fast before I get into it, J. Peter Robinson did the soundtrack for this, and this was his second Tales from the Crypt episode. He did 6 altogether. I've talked about him before, but he also did the soundtrack for Wayne's World.
Oh, cool.
He didn't do Bohemian Rhapsody, but he did the soundtrack.
He did perform Bohemian Rhapsody.
No, but one of my favorite songs to
But
play
wait, what about Ballroom's Bliss?
What?
What about Ballroom Blitz? Did he do that?
Just fuck out of here. Everyone knows that was Crucial Taunt. But
that was Tia Kura.
Yeah, and she's the front person of Crucial Taunt. So come on, dude. Like, don't try to fuck around with Wayne's World 2 and not like fucking back me up here. Also the soundtrack for New Nightmare. One of my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movies, which you can listen to our episode on Nightmare on Elm Street with the yeah. So
real quick, today's the release day for Dream Warriors.
Oh,
Fuck yeah. I have a Dream Warriors tattoo on my thigh, you guys.
Do you know shit?
Yes,
yes.
That's awesome.
Dream Warriors is, oh my god. That, like, let's be honest, Dokken was not a great band, but they released fucking Dream Warriors, so they can do no wrong in my book. They still play to this day, and you can go on YouTube and see them play it, and they're smart. They take it down an octave, so you just can't sing that high anymore when you're that old. And that's not a knock on Don Dokken. It's like the dude's got fucking pipes, right? But it's as you get older, your voice changes. This is life. And then recently, Jason, in 2020, he did a TV show. I think it's right up your alley. It was the last thing he was credited for. He did a TV show called Fetish.
Cool.
So that sounds like a show that Jason would be super interested in. So that's one. All right, my song of the day, and I don't want to get into too much what's going on in the world around us, but this morning when I was thinking about this, I had a few choices in mind. I'm gonna do two. I'm gonna do 2 songs a day.
Wait, what? I did not authorize this.
I'm gonna do. I'll be quick. But first is going to be from a local Las Vegas band. And their first EP came out in 2003, and it really sparked the Las Vegas metal scene back when we didn't really have a scene. So shout out to this band, and shout out to my buddy Eric Von Forster, who actually booked a metal fest in 2003, and actually is probably the driving force behind what gave us a metal scene back then. But the band I'm going to use is a band called Guttural Secrete. They were one of these like underground, like super guttural death metal bands that was coming out around the time of like you had labels like Unmatched Brutality, and actually they're on Unmatched Brutality, but you had labels like Unique Leader, which is still around, United Guttural, which they've been disbanded after after the owner passed away. But they were one of the first ever Las Vegas bands to go like as dumb as it sounds, like to go super underground. And their first EP was called give me one. Sorry, want to burp off microphone. But they gave us a great EP called Artistic Creations with Cranial Stumps. Right, like my first saw this episode, I'm like, God damn it, that fits right in. And I believe the song was track number 3. I remember track numbers, not names. Was called "Slit into Succulence," and the intro was a clip from Exorcist 3.
Oh.
So I give them credit for that. And granted, I'll be honest, like some of the stuff they wrote about has not aged well. Granted, this is 19 years ago and written by dudes that were 19 and 20. So their later stuff was definitely, I wouldn't say it's more artistic, but it's definitely a different vein. But I'll use our song "Slit into Succulence" off 2003's Artistic Creation with Cranial Stumps, and that's by Guttural Secrete. And the second band I'm going to do, based on everything going around in the world, which I'm not going to get too into, but it's a great band from the Ukraine called Drudka, and Drudkh, one of my favorite bands of all time. Like they just, I always love when you hear bands from different regions of the world and they can bring in like their localized music and their localized flavor. And when you hear them, you just know they're doing something different. And I mean that in the best way possible. And they've released, God, a million great records, but I'll go off of in 2015, they released a record called A Furrow Cut Short. And all the tracks, lyric wise, are all lyrics from native Ukrainian poets. So I'll go ahead and go with the track off there, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the Ukrainian name for it because I'm just going to butcher it, and it's not going to be okay. But the English translation is to the epic of unbowed poets. I'll throw it on our Spotify track if I ever remember to update that. I'm so bad at it. So I'll go with Drudka off the record A Furrow Cut Short, to the epic of unbowed poets.
Thank you, Mondo. All right, Jody, you have 2 pieces of trivia for us today?
No, just one. And really, really after the discussions we've already had, like y'all already stole my thunder here, because I'm going to talk about an artist named Vasilius, I think, Quesada, who has a series of paintings called Blood Piss Blues. And it's this whole set of paintings that are mostly in reds and yellows. Can you see where we're going here?
No, I can't. Please enlighten us.
He paints with blood and his own urine as a lot of the paint that he uses.
Hold on a second. You said his own urine, but not his own blood.
His own blood as well. Like he even
okay.
says, like, I don't take it from anyone else. He has it drawn at a hospital by professionals every couple months. But what I thought was so interesting about it that's no fun. Just do it in the basement. Just slice it open.
I'm in Vegas. We don't have basements, but keep going.
But anyway, what I thought was really interesting, he has all these surreal images and heads that are all teeth and kind of weird trippy stuff drawn in this the blood and urine, except for one, which is a portrait of actor Hugh Laurie from House. Just,
oh wow,
looking like Hugh Laurie, painted in blood and pee. So like, wow, that's interesting, man. So if you ever need a portrait of Hugh Laurie to hang in your home, there's one to look for.
That's the one.
Did he do those Metallica album covers?
Those are called. So first of all, those are called Blood and Semen, not Blood and Piss. So
depends on your opinion of those albums, but
no, it has nothing to do with the opinion. It's that's what the artist called those paintings. So that's another episode. We're going to talk about how about those records.
All right, that might break up the show if we do that.
Well, I don't think it would. I think we'd have a
no. I think we have a civil discourse.
At least they're not Led Zeppelin. That's why I always said that. So Metallica just played in Vegas with the.
Yeah, I know. I was going to mention that.
Yeah, they opened, but their openers were Greta Von Fleek.
Mm-hmm.
Greta Von Fleek, Von Fleek,
Yeah.
or Von Fleek, Von Fleek.
Yeah, I think it's Von Fleet.
Oh, it doesn't matter because they suck. Like who would want to be a shitty cover band of a shitty cover band? Like, I guess those guys said, let's just make shitty music based on this other shitty band. So it's whatever.
You don't have strong opinions about this, right?
You know, dude, like if you're gonna make a cover band, at least pick a band that wasn't fucking horrible. So I guess, but hey, they're touring Metallica, making millions of dollars playing music, and I'm not. So it just shows you the public has shitty taste.
All right, I don't know how to transition out of this, so I'm just going to transition out of this.
Jason, you're the master. We've always called you the master of transitions, so I think you got this.
All right, so we're going to talk some dad advice, and one of the things we were talking about before the show was, about sharing or encouraging your children's passions and opening them up to your passions and seeing what they like, what they don't like, what sticks, what doesn't stick. And just to kick us off, this weekend I took my family to a retro gaming convention because I'm that cool. And it's one of those things didn't really know how my kids would react to that. I mean, because they watch like there's that new Sonic movie that came out a couple, like 2 years now, I guess, that they really like, and they've been watching a lot of YouTube stuff, and they have like a little Mario stuff, and they've seen me play like some of the newer Mario games, but there's that's only a fraction of what they did, and they really ate up just seeing all that old school cover art and everything. And I feel like a lot of games these days aren't really much about the tactical feel of it like it used to be, of having a game with a box and seeing this cool kind of artwork that isn't really part of the game, because it's only like 8 bits or 16 bits, that like obviously isn't
But
part of
that was the era, though, the great VHS covers, where it didn't matter what was in the box. Like,
yes.
Draw them in with that great cover.
Right. So yeah, nowadays they just take like screenshots and just put that on the cover, or the little clip art before you download the game. But then you have to really sell it. While you just kind of walk through the store, walking through Hollywood Video or whatever it was to rent the game. So they really ate up just walking around seeing the artwork and everything. We bought some stickers with some stuff on it, and I mean, then they came home like, oh, let's play some games. So we played some Smash Brothers and a couple other things like that. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool experience. Danica, did you want to talk about that too?
It's really difficult for me to talk about because, again, as I said earlier, my parents weren't very encouraging of my art career. Both of my parents are immigrants, and they believed that I should find a more practical profession, and often pushed me towards that. And I think that's part of why I've been so rebellious even into my old age.
That's good. That's good. Do you think it would have been? Do you think they possibly could have done both? Like push you to be obviously like make you a good living, but also like really push your artistic abilities and like really back those and support those. Is that possible? I'm just honestly, I don't know.
My mom is Asian and an accountant, so no.
Okay, I get you.
I think some people might not be capable of that, but I think that would be the ideal parenting, to be able to cultivate both sides of that coin.
Right. Well, even so, are you familiar with the show UFO Hunters at all?
I know it. I can't say I've watched it, but I definitely know the show.
So my half brother is Patrick Uskert, and he's one of the hosts of that show.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
And his dad, my father, was not supportive of that at all. It's like, well, but your son is on the History Channel. Like, don't care. What is this garbage? Like,
oh no.
So,
have you guys seen the movie? It just came out on Shudder, Hellbender.
No,
it's at the top of my list.
Yeah, same here.
Danica, have you seen it?
no.
So it's actually made by a family, and the plot is that there's a mother who's living with her daughter, and they're like both witches. It's more like a something that's kind of passed down or somewhat genetic. It's kind of hard to explain. It's a little abstract. But so you have a mother and daughter playing a mother and daughter in real life. They also are in the band. They have a real life band, and then they're also playing as a band in the movie. And it was co-directed by the mother and her husband. So it's like this whole like really cool family thing. So I think it's really cool. This is family getting together, making this really cool indie horror movie. And also their last name is like Adams. So you're like, oh, the Adams family.
Yeah.
One D though, not two Ds. Isn't the Adams TV show? I think it's two Ds.
Yeah, it's
Probably.
2D.
Yeah.
It is.
Fine, ruin my sunshine.
It's all good. It's all good.
Jody,
It's
what-
fun to say this movie
yeah.
is directed by the Addams family. Like I like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
No, Danica, I grew up in a household too, where I grew up with a bunch of drug addicts and alcoholics who just didn't know what I was doing ever. So it's kind of weird. But one thing I've always struggled with is like my daughter is really into theater, the technical side of it, tech theater, and I really, really want to push her in that. I don't want to say push her. I want to support that direction. And I'm trying to be realistic with her and saying like, yeah, I really want to go that direction, but I want you to also have a fallback in case it doesn't work out. Like I never want you to think it's not going to work out, but I want you to have one in case it doesn't work out. And I think she's pretty receptive to that. She started investing into stocks recently, which I wish I did when I was her age. but and that's kind of why I brought that up. Like, do you think it's possible for parents to like do both, like push their kid, like support their children's 100%, like their ambitions and their wants, but also be realistic and say, but if you don't, here's a fallback for you.
I mean, I've seen it among my peers. I've dated people who are artists who've had supportive parents, and they seem to just navigate their careers just fine, you know?
Cool.
But that wasn't my situation, so
No,
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because that's something that worries me. Because like I've told my kid, like I'd rather you like go for your passions and fail and live at home till you're my age than not pursue those. Because I want to give you that, that base to be able to pursue your passions, but to also be realistic. So I was just wondering on that, because that's just as a dad, it's something I worry about all the time. Like, am I not supporting you enough, or am I pushing you too hard to go this direction? Whereas all I really want my child at the end of the day is to be happy. I think that's most of us nowadays. I think a lot of us grew up in, saying a lot of us, I grew up in a really broken home, and like all I really want is for my kids to be happy no matter what they're doing. And I want them to really, really go for those passions that I wasn't able to go for. Not that I want to live vicariously through them. I just want to be like, fuck yeah, man, like go do that shit. Cause I'll be here to make sure, like help you pick you back up if you fall.
Yeah.
That's really lovely.
Yeah. Mondo wants to be one of those was it beauty contestant moms?
But we said, wait, did you call me a beauty contestant mom?
Yeah, that's your passion.
Nah, dude, because they, when I say live like, I don't want to live vicariously through them.
I want them. Kidding.
I want them to just like be awesome. I want them to do better than I did, and I want to give them the platform to do it on without fear of failure. Yeah. I think that's a hard part. Like when you get into any kind of arts, like it's always that, like when you have people around you telling you, so okay, here's this dumb. It's like if you like, I'm a huge fan of pro wrestling, and nothing makes me happier than I hear successful professional wrestlers when they ask about their parents, and their parents are like, yeah, dude, like my dad told me, just fucking go for it. If you don't, we'll figure something out, but fucking go for it. Like I want my kids to go for it. And
yeah, I guess from a logical perspective, it's the question of like at what point do you say, okay, this is not happening, and maybe shift gears? Because a lot of things we've talked to a lot of people, and their dad advice is like, go for your dreams, and don't when you hear no, just keep going. It's like, well, at some point, if you hear enough no's or something like that, or if it's just not happening, at what point do you change your expectations or change your plan? That's something I don't have an answer to, but it's something I always wonder when people say that.
But I want to say that decision's not up to me.
Yeah.
It's up to my child when they decide.
Right.
And I will still, I think, like push their passions, because I'd rather them live at home till they're fucking 50. If that means they can pursue their passion and do something really cool that makes them happy, as opposed to living in the rat race. Like, and not knock on any of us, but I think we grew up in that generation that was like, you go to school, you get a job, you do great at your job, and you shut the fuck up. And there's a reason why like the Renaissance happened in the 1800s, and that kind of creativity has never happened. I should say never happened since. There's a lot of creativity out there, but I think you need people in your life to really nurture that creativity and not be the voice of dissent.
Speaking, go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess to cement your point, it's important as parents to be that foundation of support, because the world is already telling your children no for whatever reason. Whatever field that they want to enter, they're going to experience some pushback, most likely. For whatever reason, there's got to be something that gives them some feeling of hope. So hopefully that's you.
I try to be. I don't know. I mean, my kid might tell you differently, but it was funny. She's watching a YouTube video. I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen these guys before. And she's like, yeah, they're kind of cool. I'm like, I bet you if I didn't say that, they'd be really cool. Because, I mean, yeah, so it's interesting. Like it's something I think about a lot, about like really trying to cultivate passions of younger people. And especially like Danica, you mentioned your family wasn't supportive at all about your artistic endeavors, right? So when by them not being supportive, did that kind of make you like want to push harder to achieve those, or was it disheartening? I don't mean
or both.
No, yeah, it was both. It was a combination, because sometimes it was very crippling. I came into art as a means of working through trauma, at a very traumatic teenage period, and things only kind of got worse from there. And if I didn't have my art as a means to work through it, I probably would have fucking snapped. Like
I get it.
my second husband, he also used art to get out of a dark place, but sometimes it wasn't enough. Like when we were working on our feature, he didn't have a handle on his drinking. He drank on set constantly, wound up having a heart attack in the middle of our shoot. So sometimes art can't fucking save you, but at least like you're doing something to fucking try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. It's important.
Okay. Then also, we're recording this on Sunday the 27th. When this comes out next week, it'll be past Mondo's birthday. So let's all wish future Mondo a happy birthday.
We can't transition from that into that. Holy shit, Jesus.
You just said he was the master of transitions.
I know. See, I did it again.
Yeah, man. And another year older, and I'm happy to still be here on this dirt rock we're on. So.
All right, and you won't officially be on the next episode, but if you want to drunkenly dial in or zoom in, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we'll see what happens come next week.
All right, well, Danica, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
You can find me mainly on Instagram at Danica Uskert. I have other social media, but I don't want to promote it, so just find me on Instagram, please.
Fair enough.
Okay. Great, and anyone listening can check our tags as well to find those accounts.
Yeah, we'll make sure we put your link in our post.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, next week we will be reviewing Undertaking Parlor, and we'd really appreciate it if you would give us a rating and review on iTunes and a rating on Spotify. And with that, we thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Good night. I can't find the stop button. Where the fuck is the stop button? Where is my mouse? My mouse fucking disappeared.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.